right, guys, welcome to SC and Scrappy for, man, I don't know what episode this is. We're in our 20s somewhere. And we have turned page to October, which means that preseason practices are done or at least finishing up. And we're getting ready to start the season. And
real wrestling. The regular season is here.
The regular season is here. And as much as we love like Fargo and NHSEAs and Super 32 and all the different events, right? At the end of the day, the thing that people remember, the thing that people kind of talk about an awful lot, and we'll be talking about on October 15th, is winning a state title, right? I mean, that's what people talk about. Whether it is more difficult to win a Super 32 belt or not, and it is by far, to win a Super 32 belt is much more difficult than winning any state title, right? But
yeah,
you are remembered for winning state titles.
I would say, I mean, if you go down the halls of Collinsville High School, you talk about Lucas Da Silva, it's going to be the state titles that people talk about.
Right. Well, and honestly, that's kind of what makes it fun. And that's why, we are going to get together on October 15th at the Cooler, have a live show, and we're going to talk about the top 25 teams of the past. And it won't be one of Lucas Da Silva's Collinsville's teams that is amongst that list. But to be fair, right, it will be based upon, those teams kind of coming together and having won titles. So it is kind of fun. This is a fun time of the year. Everybody, I'm putting out state of programs right now. Everybody has like so much optimism about how their team is going to do. And
absolutely.
And everybody's excited about the season coming up and everything else. And we get to focus for the next 5 months on making a run, positioning yourself for a state title. And that's kind of what this is all about. It makes it fun.
Oh, this is that fun time of year where everybody still thinks they have a chance, and it's adorable.
Yeah, a long time ago.
You know damn well by the end of November, teams are gonna start realizing, all right, maybe next year. We reload this year. I love that word. People talk, we don't rebuild, we reload. No, you rebuild. You're rebuilding, good sir.
Well, and then part of the the storyline that we'll get to in the month of October is the teams that kind of keep it under the radar a little bit, and they don't let anybody to kind of know everything that's going on. Next thing you know, you're like,
Hamden County.
Ooh, they're good. Ooh, they're really good. So, all right.
Hamden County's been doing it for 20 years.
They have, and I don't know why they keep surprising everybody. That it shouldn't be a surprise by this point in time. All right.
Still not picking them.
We're gonna get to that, but that's not today.
Making it clear now. Making it clear now.
That's not today. So any coaches out there who haven't done a state of the program, I think I've got like 200 that will be done by the start of the season. It's outstanding as far as, promoting programs, promoting the sport. I think it's so awesome. We mentioned previously, join us at the Cooler on October 15th. Lucas and I will be talking about some interesting things specifically related to Georgia, but it will be our podcast for that week. We'll be taping it there in front of a live audience. And before we get into, obviously, we're going to talk about the season a little bit with the Tennessee and North Carolina rankings. Before we get to that, let's go, because we took last week off. There was Tennessee, who's number one, that we never got to really break down, didn't really get to talk about very much. And what did you think of the two events?
It was really, really fun. Shout out to TN USA and the people that were involved in getting it together. It was exciting to see the matchups, and obviously we talked about it beforehand. High level wrestling all throughout the two events. I'm just gonna throw this out there. Next year, can we please have them together? Like,
Yeah, that would be good.
I know, like, can we just please have them together so I have the excuse to drive up and see everybody wrestle together? Just a thought, but
Did you catch the live stream for the
no,
boys
I
or no?
didn't. No, because so again, you and me had this talk. I had the dates confused.
Oh, that's right. You did. You did.
Yeah, I had them entirely backwards. And if honestly, if I didn't have them backwards, I probably would have made the drive up. Like if I had known the dates, I at least would have went to the boys. The girls one, when I mapped it, I was like,
Yeah, it was a
eh,
little bit further.
that's a
Yeah.
drive. That's some gas money that I don't necessarily know I want to spend. But in all seriousness, lots of great wrestling. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to at least read up on it, see the clips after the fact and whatnot.
No doubt. No doubt. All right. So I will say, just to peek back at that just a little bit, matches were fantastic. Gonna pick out two matches in the boys. And I would say there were a couple matches. Lexi Dean and Ava Johnson and the girls was a 1 point match. I watched it on Track Wrestling. It was really interesting. And then one of the things that was frustrating about the boys side was that they streamed it live on Cleveland Wrestling TV, which is so awesome that they have their own stream for, inside the school and everything else. But I don't think it was recorded. And if you missed it, you missed it. And there's no going back. So I watched JoJo versus Mason Jacob.
What I think is going to be a pivotal part of this match is the top game from both guys. Both guys good leg riders. Jacob's looking to get his boot in on the right here and is able to. Check very tough on bottom two though, and definitely being a leg rider himself understands his position well. He's going to go quad pod. We're going to see if Jacobs goes for that same spladle that Noah Watkins hit earlier. Both these guys are coached by Zeke Moise. And there's that spladle again. You're checking a little bit of trouble.
There he is.
If Jacobs can scoot his hips a little bit more on top here.
That's the second spladle we've seen in this event.
He needs to switch his head over to the right side a little more. Not able to get it. Switching up to a power half. Good toughness there by Yurchuk. Yurchuk back in that quad pod though. Not afraid to go there. Two things you got to really watch for there are spladle and cradle. Jacob's awfully very proficient there. His club coach is Zeke Moise, the NCAA finalist, All-American out of West.
I think it was a 2-1 match. I watched Max Norman beat Logan Fowler in overtime. In the final match.
Going to overtime.
Last match, why not?
This billing living up to everybody's expectations. It's 3-3. There's 4 state titles on the mat right now between these two guys. It's dig deep time now.
There's
Norman
that
back to that underhook, trying to bully Fowler around. See if Fowler can clear that and get back to that high crotch he scored on earlier. Norman looking to go throw by again. And pulls to short offense. Logan grabs a leg. Far ankle defense here.
Oh, nothing. And there's two.
And Norman able just to power through the defense of Fowler, and he's going to get the takedown.
I did miss a few matches in there because obviously we were doing a bunch of different things. I thought it would be recorded and saved onto the Cleveland Wrestling TV YouTube page, but it wasn't. So it is what it is.
Right.
Yeah. It would have been nice. Anyway, so so that was a couple weeks ago. You and I took last week off, and this past weekend were two of the bigger events, preseason events that you find in the nation, and that is the Grappler Fall Classic and Journeyman. And bunch of wrestlers went up to Michigan, and one of the things that kind of sticks in my head about Michigan is Michigan had the most participants. But you know what state had number 2?
Florida.
Yeah.
It seems as if so I noticed that trend maybe a year or two ago, that it seems like Florida takes this trip to Michigan every fall. That this just seems to be one of the trips that a lot of Even on the girls' side, Gabrielle Tedesco was there.
Yep.
It just seems like this is one of their trips that Florida as a whole decides, yeah, we're going to send 300 people to this.
Yeah, I mean, so they did. Tennessee had quite a few. Georgia had quite a few. North Carolina, South Carolina, not as much as
Georgia,
some of
not
the
as
others.
many as usual.
Georgia, not as many as usual. That's true.
But I do want to kind of tip the cap. If you go by clubs, your team score champion was Roundtree.
Well, yeah. I mean, Roundtree brought a bunch. Now, is that only high school elite, or was that like everybody all combined?
This is the whole kit and caboodle.
Roundtree
right, beat.
So Sammy Roundtree pulling the 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds and putting them in a van, all packed right next to each other.
Count it. Count it. Man, shout out, real quick, shout out to Sammy and all the stuff they're doing with You're Not Safe. It's pretty cool. It's cool seeing more people getting on the media side of it. So quick shout out to him.
Yeah. Have they started their podcast?
I know that they've done like interviews and that they've done rankings. I don't know if they've actually done podcast episodes yet, but either way.
All right.
Either way, I like that he's honing in on the elementary and middle school too. I really like that there's another guy getting in on that mix. I enjoy it. Good for them.
I can't do it, man. I can barely keep track of the high school kids. There's no way in the world.
You may not be able to. I just don't want to.
I don't want to either.
I refuse, good sir.
All right, so let's talk about a few standout performances at each of the two events. And by the way, I want to go ahead and say, the belt. We talked about championship trophies before, and the belts and the robes, that sort of thing. The Journeyman hammer is a pretty cool trophy, and I've seen a lot of people replicate it.
So I got slaughtered when I talked about the Super 32 belt.
Oh, you did?
I got slaughtered. Do I dare do it again? Do I dare?
Do you not like the hammer?
I like it. See, this is where I'm gonna get slaughtered again. I like it.
I know.
We get a different finish on it. I don't like how bright it is, like how light white wood it is. That's all.
I love it. Okay.
No, I know it's amazing. No, I love that they give a hammer. I love that it's different. Yes, it gets copied a million times over.
It does.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
You know what? That's the most sincere form of
flattery,
right?
If you're doing awards and you see that tournaments around the country are copying you, you're probably doing something right.
Absolutely. All right. So let's go to 5 standout performances from the Grappler Fall Classic. You and I will go back and forth, so it may not stay at 5, but do you have one for me and I'll give you one?
Yeah, I do. Max Norman was on straight demon time this weekend in Tennessee. Fall. Beats a tough Tristan Green of Ohio 3-1. Beats Edmund Enright out of Illinois, who I believe is an Illinois State runner-up last season, 5-2. And he wrestles Kendrick Hodge in the finals.
And the music just gets loud enough right at the time that they're talking right at top of the and they don't bend down for you. They just like
And in the most respectful way I could say it, beat his doors off. 10-3. Which is, I've not seen Hodge get beat like that in a long, long time. Like, I've seen Hodge lose matches. I've never seen him get beat 10-3 like that.
Yeah. So I agree with you. Max Norman really wrestled well. And if you don't know how good Enright is from Mount Carmel, Illinois, that kid is legit. And
yeah, that Joker's nasty. Stuck Brandon Cody. For my Southeastern people, sticks Brandon Cody in the second period and was up when he did it.
Yeah.
Like this kid
Enright. We're talking about Enright. We're not talking about Norman. Norman didn't wrestle Cody.
No. Enright stuck Cody in the quarters to get to Norman, and Norman beat him 5-2.
Right. I agree with you. I'm going to go with another Tennessee kid. and that is Mason Jacob. Mason Jacob, who lost to Urchuk in the Who's Number One the week before, heads up, still representing Dobbins Bennett, who tip of the cap back to Max Norman, who was at Dobbins Bennett, now at Baylor, right? But Mason Jacob came in seated
Transfer portal.
came in seated 6th in a really good weight class at 119 and ended up 3rd. I think I'm trying to remember who finished in front of him. Do you know off the top of your head?
What weight?
119.
Oh, Mills beat him in the quarters. I know that.
Yeah, Mills beat him. And let's see. And
Jacob got 3rd.
Yeah, Jacob got 3rd, beat Colin Limbert, not of Throwater Central Catholic, who they have on the thing, but Colin Limbert from Ohio for 3rd and 4th. Anyway, so Mason Jacob was one of the ones that I was paying attention to. I like kids who battle through who were seated lower than what they end up finishing. I think that's pretty cool.
For sure.
All
No, I
right,
agree.
all right. Who you got another one?
Well, at 119, and might as well stay at 119, Antonio Mills, year on year, has went up and either won or been in the finals of the Fall Classic. He goes once again, Fall Tech Major, beats Mason Jacob, wrestles in Payson DuPille Carson, in an all-time classic from what I was informed by Sammy and them, that the two of them really had a one hell of a match. And then he loses to Derricker in the finals at PA. If you don't know Tyler Derkeraker, I'm butchering that name. Just for the sake of understanding, right? That kid has wins over, Crook, Moses Mendoza, Urch. The kid that he wrestled in the finals is a super hammer. Like, that kid's super tough. So shout out to Antonio Mills once again having a fantastic Grappler Fall Classic.
All right, so I'm going to stick again with 119, and I'm going to go with Florida state champion Luis Acevedo out of South Dade, who came in, I think, as the 12 seed and ends up beating Roman Lermer, 2-time state champion in Florida, 6-4, then pins Limbert, then loses to Deckraker in overtime in the semis. So Acevedo had a heck of a tournament, ends up taking, I think, 5th or 6th, and in a super stacked weight. So
yeah.
All right, who else you got?
I'm going to go up to 171 pounds. And there's some Georgia hammers in that bracket. Obviously, Bambinelli's your champion. Secoy comes in 3rd. Neither one of them, though, are my hammer.
Bambinelli didn't win.
Sorry, runner-up. Sorry, he's runner-up. He lost to Kelly in the finals. Excuse me.
He did.
My standout performance goes to Robert D. Haven, who over the past year or two has continued this upward trajectory. He loses in the 2nd round, battles his way back through the backside, wins over Sedek, Boone, Brownlow, who's a monster. If you don't know who
Chase Brownlow.
Oh, I can't think of his first name for the life of me.
Chase.
Yeah, Chase Brownlow is a killer. Beats him up, right? Then he wrestles Carlos Garcia out of California. I believe the Daniel Cormier product. Have you mistaken?
That neck of the woods. I don't know if he actually trains there, but yeah.
In that vicinity. And then he gets to the 3rd, 4th, where he sees Tyler Secoy and gives him a 5-3 match. This kid, Robert D. Haven, man, he's a stud. And it's one of those things where we've seen him, or at least I've watched him year over year get better, and once again had a fantastic performance. So that's my tip of the cap.
I agree. I think Robbie DeHaven has had a great tournament, and he was going to be one of mine. So I will do the end one, the last one, and that is to Christian Fretwell. And Fretwell, first, so good to see him back on the mat after Fargo. I think he got hurt, and so on and so forth. He came from the 3 seed, tech fall, pin, major of Chandler Sewell from South Carolina, beat Cameron Chenevert from Michigan, who I believe is a Michigan State champ, in the semifinals. Before losing to Zinkin in the finals. But Fretwell wrestled fantastic for Lake Gibson. And that was a great run. All right. Just real quick, Journeyman. Mostly Lake Highland Prep. There were a couple of other people that went up there. I know that North Carolina had a few kids that went up. I know Dermot Carpenter from Georgia went up. But Lake Highland Prep, Ethan Rivera won a hammer. Charlie DeSena made the finals. Daniel Aranda made the finals. DeSena lost, just to give you an idea. Okay. So Rivera won. DeSena lost in the finals to Nate Desmond. And Aranda lost in the finals to Lillendahl. So,
okay.
So, pretty decent competition.
Yeah, pretty solid weekend for Lake Highland as well.
No doubt. And speaking of Lake Highland Prep, I think I did you see the Instagram post? I don't know who it was. It was Gorman or somebody, but you had like Cooper Hilton, Gorman, and CJ Torres all in the same picture at Virginia Tech.
I did see that, and I was like, oh my.
Oh my is right.
Transfer portal alert.
All right, so let's jump to the it's not even really preseason anymore
at this point. Like, I put him in the preseason tab of my stuff.
All right, so let's make it the preseason rankings for North Carolina and Tennessee. I did North Carolina, Lucas did Tennessee, and
I'm making a point right now to you Tennesseans, right? I did my best. I'm sorry. There are some in there that I know are probably not great, but I just don't know a lot of teams down below the top 5 in each class. So throw that out there.
Well, and to be fair,
Tennessee not that that's going to protect me at all.
Tennessee kind of, I don't know if people who are watching this understand that every 2 years, 3 years, it's different for every state. We kind of shuffle the deck and decide different classifications. And this happened to be a year where Tennessee switched some classifications, which always makes it interesting too, because you're comparing 1A returning scores to 2A scores.
Yeah.
And how do you mesh those together?
My matrix has a fit when it has to do that, because it's like, it only has results against them. Why am I judging it against them? This don't compute. And I'm like, oh, great. This is fantastic.
I agree. All right. So let's do the girls in the state of Tennessee first. And the reason I'm going to start there is because besides Cleveland, I've heard a lot of rumblings about girls being at different schools and who is going to be eligible, who's actually going to wrestle. I think there's still some unknowns about some of those things. So I want everybody to kind of keep that in mind as we're talking about these teams. Does that work?
Yeah. A big asterisk needed that some of these, by the end of this week, we could see drastic changes in what actually is in.
See what I sent you.
All right. So let's count down from 10.
All right. In at 10 is Gibbs. Number 9, Summit. 8, Oakland. 7, West Creek. 6, Independence. 5, Riverdale. 4, Montgomery Central. 3, Clarksville. 2, Rossview. Number 1, Cleveland.
And I think that based upon Cleveland last year, that's a pretty solid pick at the top.
Yeah, I think so too. Funnily enough, actually, I can't say that yet. I don't want to spoil all the stuff. But yeah, I think Cleveland is the team to beat in Tennessee. I think Rossview and Clarksville, though, put up really solid lineups. My dark horse right now is West Creek. They win 3 matches at who's number 1. If they get enough bodies to fill the rest of the lineup, I really could see them being a top 4, top 5 program. I just need to see a little bit more before I make that leap. But yeah, super interested to see how they do.
All right. Okay. Let's jump to Division 2, counting down from number 10.
All right. In at number 10 is Friendship Christian, 9, Chattanooga Christian, 8, Boyd Buchanan, 7th, Brentwood Academy, 6, Christian Brothers, 5, Montgomery Bell Academy, 4, Lakeway Christian, 3, the Macaulay School, 2, Father Ryan, and number one pound for pound state of Tennessee, in my opinion, Baylor.
All right. So Baylor, how much did Matt Hart, who was a national prep runner-up, and Max Norman and Titus Norman?
It helped. I'll put it like that. It helped. Like, so just for reference, right? They score an 8.9. If we look in the state of Georgia, that would put them number 3 behind Jefferson and Camden County. And I'd argue Jefferson's ranking is probably still questionable with the question of Sammy Brown. And then I just feel like Camden is going to be number 1 until someone beats him outright. I'm not putting someone ahead of him, but I'm still not picking them in tournaments. But I mean, like the Normans, you Nate Askew, I mean, just list names, right? Is all you got to do. Ollie Phillips. Like that team is one of the nastiest teams I've seen in my life. Yeah, Baylor's quite good at wrestling. So
one team that has long been a super good program, and they've got some freshmen, and that is Macaulay. How do you take into account the freshman influence? Because they don't necessarily have any matches yet, but Jackson Lane, Cameron Boyles, Williams.
That's where things get interesting, is having to explain to people that my rankings will not include freshmen until they have wins over high school guys that are already in the matrix. So when they wrestle at a Grappler Fall Classic, a Super 32, that's really when we see freshmen start percolating into the system.
Okay. All right. So what you're telling me is, up to this point, they may not have been included, but they can be included as. And so if they went down to the Super 32 early entry tournament and had matches, they would probably be included.
Yep, bingo. Yep. Because I didn't want to do the whole, I've seen that kid wrestle, so I know how good he is. Because then if I didn't see some other kid, then all of a sudden I don't know what I'm talking about. So I just blanketed it until they have matches against people already in my matrix.
No, that makes sense.
I'm not even touching it. That was just the way. Not only did it make it easier on me, it gave it a bit more of like uniformity. This is the way I'm doing it.
All right. 1A. And just for everybody who doesn't know, I said it previously, and I mean, man, I'm putting this all out there, and I have not gotten a response back from Coach Blair, who is in charge of wrestling in the state of Tennessee. 99% sure that I'm reading everything correctly. We have moved classifications, we have moved sections, and so on and so forth. And Knoxville Halls, who I believe won traditional last year, is not in 1A any longer. So let's do a countdown of our top 10 in 1A.
In at 10th is Whitwell, 9, Tullahoma, I believe is how you say that, 8, Red Bank, 6, Truesdale County, 5, Greenville, 5 Eagleville, 4 Gibbs, 3 Soddy Daisy, 2 Pigeon Forge, and 1 Signal Mountain.
All right. And a team that, for me, that's sitting on maybe the outside of what your top 10 is, but has some good wrestlers and is slowly getting better, is Samuel Everett School of Innovation.
Yeah, they sit right now in my rankings at 12th, but surely in striking distance of that top 8.
So
yeah, super tough team, especially on the come up. Like, for sure, one to watch for as time goes on.
So as we talked about with so many others, but we didn't talk about necessarily at the beginning of this one. This is a power ranking, so it's not just duels or just traditional. It is a meshing of the two of them together.
Both
is Signal Mountain a better dual team or traditional team according to your matrix?
Dual team. They're a bit more solid throughout the lineup, and you have the Urchucks who will help you a lot. But as a whole, my matrix scores them higher in duels.
Okay. All right. And then my last thing is a team that I'm going to go ahead and throw out there that I think could push any of the teams for the top spot, and that is Soddy Daisy. I think Soddy Daisy.
Agreed. This seems like a year that Soddy Daisy seems like a year they might return to form.
Yeah. No. And if you remember back in the 2010s teens, there were teams of Soddy Daisy that were super tough.
When I was in middle school and I would do camps, we always, we saw about the kids at Tennessee you had to worry about were Soddy Daisy. Everybody else, McCauley to an extent, Father Ryan, Cleveland a little bit, but it was mainly Soddy Daisy. That was what we knew in Georgia. And so for me, Soddy Daisy for sure, not to say had a couple of down years per se, but not years where they were up to prototypical form. I think this could be a year where we'll see them return to that status.
All right, let's jump to 2A and countdown from number 10.
All right, number 10th, or in at 10th, is Blackman, 9 Science Hill, 8 Bradley Central, 7 Oakland, 6 Green Hill, 5 Brentwood, 4 Dobbins Bennett, 3 Summit, 2 Knoxville Halls, and number 1 Cleveland. Cleveland comes in as your number 2 pound-for-pound team in the state as well.
Well, and I think
class
they're going
class, I guess,
for their 7th in a row.
Whole lot of them. Whole lot of them. That's how many they're going for.
How I'm obviously wearing the Summit shirt. Shout out to Coach Miller and that gang for sending me a shirt and that sort of thing.
I never get gear.
No, because you always piss somebody off. That's why.
Yeah, I always fucking don't always get mad at me. It's one of those things.
So
one of those things.
So how I guess how close is the pack to Cleveland? I'm not talking about numerically. I'm just talking about just generally conversationally.
So this is where, for me, it's weird because you're looking at like a Knoxville Halls and the results against 1A schools. And it's like, how does it translate per se? I think Cleveland is your favorite. And I think everybody else is kind of rank outsiders. I don't necessarily think there is a real, I think Knoxville Halls has some gap to Summit maybe. And then once you hit like Summit, Bennett, Brentwood, it's kind of like, all right, who's going to make that run for third? I'm kind of intrigued though. I think Cleveland, I think the Raiders are in a very good spot to multi-peat again.
Best fantasy duel within the state of Tennessee, though, would be Cleveland versus Baylor.
Obviously.
Who wins a duel between the two?
I'd say Baylor.
Yeah?
I'd say Baylor. And a runner-up to that on the undercard would be Signal Mountain Father Ryan.
Oh, that would be fun. That'd be a hell of a duel.
So, all right. So what I wanted to say is Cleveland is currently the first team to ever in my rankings be number 1 in their boys and in the girls. They're the first team to ever be number 1 in both.
Yeah. I'm trying to think.
So you look
I'm
at
even
Georgia.
not even your rankings. I'm trying to think in the states that we do it, right? I don't know.
I don't think there is. I don't think there's been one to win both of them, do the double. I don't think so. Because you look in South Carolina, Greenwood last year. Greenwood didn't win in 4A. St. Martin and Mississippi won the girls. They finished in like fifth in the boys. And in Georgia, it was Carrollton. And they are a top 10 7A school, but not championship contender per
number
se.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So let's transition. Oh, by the way, if you're interested in giving any grief to Lucas, just send him some direct messages. That's where you know.
Of course, please do. You know what? If you got grief for what I have to say, you can do it in person on October 15th at the Cooler at our live show.
There you go. Hey, I love that plug. That was good. That was good.
That was a hell of a plug. That was a hell of a plug. To be fair to me, that was a good one.
All right, so let's jump over to the state of North Carolina, where I'm going to give the preseason rankings from our perspective for the state of North Carolina. There are 4 classes plus the girls, so I'll do this pretty quickly so we don't spend a ton of time on it. The girls are starting. This is their first official year, and it's always weird to say official because for years before Georgia had an official state tournament, a bunch of girls wrestled, and they would have a girls state championship. Back when I coached girls in Florida in 2000 or 1999, there was an unofficial girls state championship. It wasn't until 2022 that there was actually a sanctioned official state championship in the state of Florida. So take all this with a grain of salt. This is what officially the North Carolina State Activities Association is this is their first official year. But because they've wrestled so much up to this point, we have a pretty good sense of the teams that are super good in the state of North Carolina. Yeah. So number 10, Lake Norman, 9, East Rowan, 8, Mallard Creek, 7, Cary, 6, Laney, 5, Mount Airy, with your Fierce and Scrappy member Jamie Hurl, right?
Jamie Hurl, shout out Jamie Hurl.
Number 4, Jack Britt. Number 3, North Henderson. 2, Havelock. And number 1, Lumberton, who won last year's last unofficial one. They return a ton. Lumberton, Havelock, North Henderson all return a lot of girls who I think at this level, and maybe it might be in most states, right? The ability to get 10, 14 girls in a lineup is huge.
It matters. It matters. I would say there's nearly a direct correlation on that front for that exact reason. Like if you could get 11, 12 girls in your lineup and a few others, look at the in Georgia for my George people, Carrollton, Chestatee, Greenbrier. The reason why they're successful is because they have 30 girls in the room. They're able to get a lot of bodies on the mat.
That's right. And it makes a difference. And it's really hard. You might have a May Prado, you might have a Genevieve Vaughn, you might have different girls.
Yeah.
Singularly really, really tough. But what makes Cleveland good is the fact that Piper Fowler's there, but also that Piper Fowler's there with a bunch of other
with 20 teammates.
Correct. So, all right, let's jump to 1A. Number 10, Albemarle. 9, Bradford Prep. 8, South Stanley. 7, Allegheny. 6, Rosewood. 5, Thomasville. 4, Northeast Carolina Prep. 3, Uwharrie Charter. 2, Robbinsville. And number 1, Avery County. And I'm going to do a little education for Lucas here because he doesn't know the state of North Carolina all that well.
Yes, teacher, please.
Basically, over the last, I don't know, decade, half a decade, it has been an Avery County, Robbinsville, Uwharrie Charter battle in for 1A.
I was going to say, what's funny about it being 1A is 3 of the teams I have heard of in North Carolina, Uwharrie Charter, Robbinsville, Avery County. That's what's funny to me. It's 3 of the ones I have heard before. They're all in the same class.
Now, the one thing that sticks out to me about this, and we could have made a point that part of that top 10 should have been Mount Airy, right? Mount Airy is a good program, but, and I'm not saying top 3. I'm talking about in the top 10. But this is the first year where I'm not sure that Jamie Hurl and Hope Horan are going to be able to wrestle on the boys' side.
Oh, yeah, true.
Because you have the girls' official state championship, which I think happens exactly at the same time. So they're going to have to pick a path. And for small schools like 1A schools who rely on a little 106 pounder who's a tough like Jamie Hurl to step in, that's a tough loss.
You know, it for sure would hurt you. See, there's a lot of conversations like that in an off-season episode, we need to take a full off-season episode and just talk about like there's 5 or 6 things I feel like with the girls that need a full kind of in-depth discussion, or like we got to get like someone like Coach Bradley on the phone and have a full like, hey, what are the thoughts? Because like that's always been one for me, man, is the girls having to pick one or not. I mean, I understand the thought process on one end. Then I also know for some of the girls, like you mentioned, a Genevieve Vaughn and May Prado, it kind of forces their hand because respectfully, most of the time in the year, they wipe most of their competition. So it kind of puts a cap on what they can get.
No, it does. It does. I'm sure it's a difficult choice. Now, they still have a choice. And that's a good thing. All right.
Obviously, yes, that is a good thing of that.
In 2A, 10, I've got Lincolnton, 9, Brevard, 8, Surrey Central. No Jeremiah Price any longer, but still a Jacob Price at Surrey Central. Number 7, RS Central. 6, Washington. I did their state of the program for Washington. Man, that looks like a tough team from top to bottom. And one to keep in mind or keep an eye out for. Number 5, Trinity. 4, Seaforth. 3, Moorhead. 2, Bandies. And number 1, Mount Pleasant. And where is Newton Conover? They lost a lot to graduation. Probably still a top 10 team, but if we're talking about strictly numbers, and this is where it kind of gets, again, this is a power ranking, so it's a little hard. And if you lose a lot of numbers, especially on the dual side, man, if you have 3 really good kids, it'll help you in traditional. But man, if you've got a lot of new faces in the rest of the lineup, you might be struggling a little bit.
Might be some tough sledding.
It could be. All right, jump into 3A. Number 10, Central Cabarrus. 9, First Flight. 8, Stuart Kramer. 7, Eastern Guilford. 6, Cape Fear. 5, West Rowan. 4, Dudley. 3, Ford. 2, Pisgah. And number 1, Union Pines. Yep.
4-3.
I know. That's a good question. I love that. So the reason
Ford's one of the few teams I know of because I don't like their logo. I think their logo's stupid.
Oh, I love their logo.
The word Ford with the dumb 90s looking cartoon tiger on top, no.
All right. So Ford lost a lot of wrestlers to graduation, and Coach Carey, who has led that program for many, many years, is now gone. Now, Coach Sigmund has taken over, and I'm sure Ford won't miss a beat, but you know how it goes. It takes a moment, and Union Pines and Pisgah are both in a position where they have a ton of talent. If they're going to take an opportunity to knock off Ford, in my opinion, that's this year.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'll give you that one. Fair enough.
And you know what? There's a lot of other teams. And I going back to something Lucas said earlier, I've heard rumors about some really talented freshmen coming in for different teams. And I believe that is the case. We actually have seen a couple of them competing up in Fargo and so on and so forth. But for the moment, they're not really put into this analysis yet.
I will say out of 3A, my dark horse is Stuart Kramer. Dark horse out of them. I like them. I like what I see out of them. I think they could be a top 5, top 4.
All right. Do you have one for 4A? Do you have a dark horse for 4A before I do the top 10?
Not particular. So part of my knowledge of Stuart Kramer comes from seeing them at the Falcon Frenzy the year we went, and then kind of some of their guys following me, and then me looking up some of their stuff. So yeah, I'm not as particular about 4A. I will say there's one team that seeing the name and seeing where it is, I'm a little like, oh, okay.
Okay. All right. So let's go with 4A. Number 10.
Yeah.
Number 10, A.L. Brown. 9, Grimsley. 8, Northwest Guilford. 7, Topsail. 6, Huff. 5, Lake Norman. 4, Mallard Creek. 3, Lumberton. 2, Laney. And number 1, Mooresville. And what was that school?
I thought Lake Norman was like dominant.
So kind of ebb and flow, right? They have really good teams. But again, another situation where Josh Stanley, Coach Stanley, Combat, is now at Davie County and has left Lake Norman. And Coach Lanning is now taking over at Lake Norman, from what I hear. And Lake Norman, again, will be tough. They'll be, again, one of those things. They've got the Murray boys at Lake Norman. They're going to be tough, so on and so forth. But, it's one of those things, again, Northwest Guilford, Huff, Lake Norman, all teams that are traditionally really tough. They're going to be back in the mix, but they're going to need some new faces to step in and score some points for them to be at number 1 or number 2. Laney always graduates a ton, always seems to bring back, somebody else who kind of steps in and does things. But right now, from looking at the numbers, I think Mooresville is your top team in 4A, unless something changes. All right.
Fair enough. I'm with you there.
So all the people who disagree, well, we'll see, right? Whether it's in Tennessee,
that one's on him. This one's his. This one's his.
Tennessee with Lucas, or North Carolina with me, Florida or Georgia, Mississippi, South Carolina, doesn't matter. Hopefully we in another probably 2 weeks, we're going to do a top 25 across the Southeast, which will be even crazier with the number of people who tell us that we're wrong. Go ahead.
So, one thing, North Carolina, I don't like your region names.
It's what?
West, East, Midwest, Mideast. Just call one of them Central. Mideast isn't a thing. Mideast is Saudi Arabia. Just give me a Central. Give me something.
Okay, but okay, hang on. If there's West, East, and Central, what's the other one?
Midwest. That's a thing. Midwest is a thing. It's Mideast. Pennsylvania. It's Mideast. No. Or right. Or since it's your own thing, you do whatever you want. Call one north and south of the center, even though they're still going to be split east and west. So who cares? I'm just saying, like.
Hey, one thing I'm going to ask you about this, and I think is super cool within the state of North Carolina, and I don't know if you know this, but they wrestle conferences. So
I love that.
You get a conference championship, whether it's
I love that.
Like 4A, 3A, they kind of combine them into a conference of schools that are local.
In Ohio, it's the same way. I remember that when I was up at Kent, that like me and my girlfriend, we'd go see her high school compete, and I'd notice and I'd see it, I forget the name of her conference, but the conference in the middle, and then there were team banners on 2 sides, and I was like, wait a second, your conference was 28 teams? She's like, no, we only played against those 14. That's class 3. I was like, oh. So similar, that might be an interesting thought experiment one day for a slightly handsome Italian-looking devil to do conferences for the state of Georgia.
Hey, as long as if you're going to try to do them, I want interesting conference names then.
Oh, you shouldn't have told me that. Oh, we're going to have some fun.
All right, guys. Well, that is this week's show.
The transfer portal conference coming soon.
That is this week's show. We appreciate you guys joining us. And I think I'm on tap to talk to brand new Woodward Academy head coach Chris Harden next week for next week's show. And Lucas and I will talk about a few things and get ready because, yeah, we're not too far away from the live event, and we're right around the corner from the season starting. I think we're going to have to start talking a little bit about some of the preseason rankings and maybe some individuals and stuff here in a few weeks. Does that work?
Absolutely. I think
right.
I think preseason rankings should be coming out probably at least, if not before. I probably want to wait till after Super 32, but in that range.
All right, guys. Lucas, I appreciate it, man.
Yes, sir. Take
All
care.
right. See you. Bye.